Now, I wanted to make a video on self-reflection, and one of the things that brought this video about was one of my subscribers who reached out to me. Unfortunately, this took place a few weeks ago, and sometimes I get dozens of messages from people, not demanding, but requiring some or asking for an individual response. I can't always get back to them. Now, this particular gentleman posed an interesting question, and I want to address the question and address the issues that might be peripherally related to it as well. And it's something that's really important in human psychology, and certainly your psychology as a male. I'm not going to reveal his name or anything, it's up to him, or what he specifically told me, but needless to say, he seems to have a severe physical disability, which effectively prevents him from dating or engaging the opposite sex, which is to say he's sort of out of the market, at least how he presented it to me. And I want to address that, but I want to address some issues, as I said, that are peripherally related. Now, the strange thing about a situation like this is there's a kind of universal want there. I mean, we're all sort of saddled with these instincts and these desires to engage with the opposite sex, no matter how far along we might be in our mgtow journey or red pill journey or whatever. And so we naturally ask ourselves, what can we do? Can anything be done? But I want to shift gears a little bit and redirect the discussion to the idea of envy, or the idea of the grass is always greener. I mean, there's something positive to what one might call nascent or latent envy, which is to say it drives us, it pushes us to want more and do more from life. But we should never forget the lessons that have been imparted to us by human nature, which is to say the hedonistic treadmill, things that are talked about in Buddhism, dukkha, the cycle of suffering. And I don't think I know a single person, whatever his or her station in life, who doesn't want something fundamentally different from what he or she has at any given moment, the current moment. That's particularly true if their life has been fairly static and unchanging for a while. I know a wide range of different people who all want something different to what they have, fundamentally. And this is, of course, just a human trait. People get satiated and they want something that is going to instill them with a new sense of excitement. That's particularly true of women, incidentally. Men are much more willing to grudgingly come to terms with what they have sometimes. But I'll tell you a story before I embark upon explanation and analysis. This was years ago, 15, 16, maybe 17 years ago. At the time I was living in Germany. There was this French guy, Jules, tall, handsome, sort of the prototypical handsome guy that every woman wants. By dint of his good looks and his approachableness, if you will, he just had women eating out of his hand. In fact, he did virtually nothing. He was the kind of guy who, if he had a stick in his hand, would have had to have beaten off the women or beaten away the women with a stick. I mean, they're all pursuing. I'd witnessed this with my own eyes. Every now and then, I'd have a discussion with him. And of course, being in my mid-ish, early 20s, it didn't really resonate with me, this idea that, maybe he had issues or problems, or maybe he just wasn't satisfied with it. I just looked at him and said, by the gods, if only I could have that problem too, right? When he tried to communicate with me, he said, look, I know this seems great, but it's kind of annoying, 2, 3, 4 women all sort of engaging in catfights for me. Initially, it might be amusing, but there's a point, he didn't use this term, but there's a point in satiation where it just becomes effectively too much. At the time, I just didn't have the mentality, intellectually or emotionally, to comprehend what he said, because I didn't want to. I was fixated on my envy towards him. I developed this weird kind of, I wouldn't say love-hate, but sort of like-dislike relationship with the guy. Every time I'd see him, I'd sort of grudgingly accord him respect, but also resent his existence at the same time. And this is in my sort of early-ish 20s. Well, things have changed, obviously, and I've moved on significantly since then. But here's the thing. I know so many different kinds of people, and a lot of this has been afforded to me by running this channel. People of all wealth categories, stations, male, female, and each one of them, in their moments of weakness and lack of reflection, as I said, they envision something different for themselves. I know several bored housewives who have, effectively achieved the greatest thing a woman can achieve. They popped out several children, right? Life is satisfying. They should be fulfilled, or they feel fulfilled, but they don't. They're bored. They're unhappy with their marriages, whatever. I know men of the highest station, of great wealth and status, who, of course, because they're not looking down but rather than up, are dissatisfied with their current station in life. They want more wealth, or they want more status, or whatever. And what I want to talk about is not necessarily negating ambition. I mean, human beings feel fulfilled when they do work to some degree. I mean, even me, like the sort of commercial work I do, I sometimes hate it. It's incredibly boring, insipid. It drives me crazy, proofreading and translating and doing other stuff. But when it's done, I kind of feel good about myself. Not because the work itself was interesting, but because I got out of the way and I will forthwith be paid most of the time. So there is something to be said for pursuing ambitions. They can be fulfilling. But there's an extreme to that, which can often lead us astray. And that's the type of ambition I want to talk about right here. Part of that hedonistic treadmill, the treadmill you can never really escape because it's just, it's omnipresent and it's always there. Well, I think we as humans, particularly in the modern world, often forget this, that, we actually have it pretty good, whatever our station might be. Whether we're making $30,000 or $700,000 a year, even $30,000 a year can, go a fairly long way, all things considered. We can live like, effectively, kings compared to the days of yore. And there's a careful balance that needs to be walked between, sacrificing all ambition and desire for change, because that is the impetus and the fulcrum of transforming civilization, particularly in the cases of men, but to also not be led astray by that sense of dissatisfaction. And I've been communicating with many men on this throughout the years. I've had men PM me in past years saying, well, Stardust, I make six figures, I do all this stuff. I'm not married, I have all this freedom, women want to fuck me and suck my dick, but I'm still dissatisfied. And I think, I want to reference American Psycho again. You look at the character of Patrick Bateman, and, there's a lot of truth that I've talked about in The Price of the Lie. This character who is supposed to be content with his surroundings and everything he has, but for some reason he's not, and so he resorts to some pretty extreme behavior to compensate. It gives him some modicum of happiness or contentment or satisfaction. And maybe it's the case that his compatriots in that film are also just pretending. We never know, or in the book, it's not exactly clear what they feel. They're, more props than anything else. But I've encountered these men before, dozens of them throughout the years. And, I have all of this stuff, but why isn't it still not clicking? And I think we really should reflect on what we have, as if to say, yeah, sometimes it's enough. It doesn't mean, as I said, you shouldn't pursue goals. If you're 300 pounds and you want to lose weight, that's an admirable goal, for example. If you want to make more money, if you have a project. But I think what I take issue with sometimes, and people will not like what I have to say in some cases here, is their pursuit of prescribed abstractions such that they were the highest good. I mean, that's what the Patrick Bateman character does, of course. He's pursuing money and status and, moving about in the highest echelons of society. I don't think pursuing money just for the sake of money, and this is my own opinion, is a particularly satisfactory goal. If you want to pursue money to achieve something specific, like maybe you want to fix up a car, or you want to buy a new computer, or you want to buy a purebred Great Dane. I mean, these are admirable goals. And I think in that case, in these specific scenarios, it's worthwhile pursuing money. But the idea of pursuing money just as an abstraction, just for the sake of it, with no goal apart from that, and this is something I've noticed and consistently with some of the men who've contacted me over the years. They have tons of money, but they're just kind of in the hamster wheel, as it were. And we move on to the question of love and romance, simply pursuing romance and love because it's some urge we feel. And this is, of course, the greatest urge that we do feel as human beings, particularly men, but also women for different reasons, different motivations. But I asked the gentleman who wrote to me originally, he said that he's just effectively not in the market because of his physical disability. That may or may not be a good thing. I've known men who've communicated with me over the years who've been virgins, well into their 30s or 40s, and they kind of lose interest. I mean, it's as if they haven't sort of tapped into the addictive power of female contact or romance or sexual interaction, and that sort of inures them against these sort of desires. And I guarantee you, I'm speaking to the gentleman now, that there's some guy out there with 10 different women on his dick who's so bored of it, and I've met them in real life, I've communicated with them online, that it just, not only is the juice not worth the squeeze, as Barbarossa used to like to say, but it's just not particularly satisfying. It's just like waking up and drinking your coffee, because these men have reached their satiation point. The grass only seems greener, and when you're, in terms of societal hierarchies, at the bottom, it seems that everyone has it better because you're always looking up. And the people who are, by all standards, at the highest point in society, in the dominance hierarchy, particularly men, of course, exclusively talking to men here, they don't really look down. I mean, because those guys are just ants to them. They don't matter. They're competing with their peers and the people above them. They always want more and more and more and more. And for what it's worth, they don't strike me as particularly satisfied in their station, despite having all of that. And this is a kind of, I think, a unique perspective you can have. I don't have particularly high status, and I've had my experiences with them, but I've never been wildly popular or successful with them. Being in the middle or not at the top allows you perspectives on things that might not be obvious to a lot of people, particularly people in the highest stations in society, because they're paying too much attention to everything above them to miss the important stuff below them. So this guy's question to me was, should I go mgtow? This seems like the path. I mean, I don't think going your own way is a question of, I'm going to decide one day to go mgtow. This is how I'm going to do it. I mean, that sounds a bit strange, to be honest. That's not how most men decide to go their own way. But I think one can arrive at a conclusion of, say, going your own way after weighing and balancing things. For example, if you've never actually experienced contact with women, what effectively has happened to you, and I remember this, so I was 19 when I lost my virginity, but up until then, I was obsessed with this idea of getting laid. And when it happened, I just thought, that's it. And of course, in subsequent years, I had, better or worse sex. But the point was, at the time, that it was pretty anticlimactic here. I just thought, that's the big deal. This is what happened to Elliot Rodgers, if we remember. He was obsessed with society's obsession, effectively. The abstract. I need to pursue sex. I need to have sex with women, etc., etc., not even knowing what it was like. He was simply told that it's good. And eventually it drove him insane. Now, I'm not suggesting this gentleman is in the same category at all. However, the things we're told are good in life are often not necessarily the things that we truly seek after, and the things that would satisfy us personally. It's not to say you couldn't have good sex. It's just that it tends to be overrated once you have it. And this is evidenced by the fact that men who have lots of women and lots of sex get bored with it after a while. They're in a constant pursuit of variety, but even the variety, ends up. I mean, a blowjob can only be a blowjob after a while, and you can only do so much. So this is, I think, the problem. When we want to pursue our ambitions, we really need to reflect on what our own personal preferences and needs, and so to say, what do our ambitions mean to us as individuals, as individual men, rather than pursuing abstractions that are prescriptive in the sense that society tells us we should pursue them, and of course based on our very innate and evolutionary instincts, like pursue a mate, pursue money for the sake of money because that's what you're going to do. Like I said, pursuing money is great if you have a goal you want to achieve with it, not so much if, maybe for some men just having money is a good thing, but in my experience, a lot of these men who've talked to me, they don't really feel it, as it were. So the lesson to be learned here is that there's always somebody out there that is dissatisfied no matter what his station, particularly true of people that are led by biologically and as a consequence societally prescribed abstractions of things that ought to be done for the sake of doing them without questioning their value to themselves as individuals. And there's a great power in being in a position you're in, speaking to the gentleman, because you can look effectively at everyone outside of your sphere of influence, all the people that are quote unquote, above you in station, particularly men. And you can observe this. I guarantee you, if you know people like this, you can meet them. You can simply observe them. Everyone is dissatisfied fundamentally because they don't take the time to reflect on their dissatisfaction and why they want more. They always want more and more and more. True of both men and women. Arguably more so of women. Women always want excitement. But the lesson to be learned here, I think, is that the grass only appears greener, but it is an illusion and it is a deception. And I think you'll realize that in time, whatever you think you may want might not actually be what you want, but simply what your guttural instincts tell you want and what society at large tells you what you want. Anyway, I hope that was helpful to the gentleman. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. I will check you out later. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.